So in today's video, I want to break down the 200% rejection play that I took today on the S&P 500 ETF. This morning, we had a CPI print that came in as expected. The market slowly moved higher intraday, but it was a very weird, slow grind that I really couldn't find any great setups on. Around 12 o'clock, we started to get close to a major supply level on the S&P 500 ETF, as well as the 200 SMA. Now, typically, this is a little bit past when I like to trade. This came in around 12 o'clock. It's a little bit further than I like to stick around, but this setup was really looking nice, and I did stay around a little bit longer to potentially take this trade. We started to see some rejections off that 200 SMA, also a previous supply level. I took this trade with the group, stayed patient, waited for it to work out, and I walked away with a very healthy profit, and I want to go ahead and break that trade down today. From this video, you should learn a little bit about patience, a little bit about technical analysis, and trusting your setup when you get into a position, so I hope you guys do enjoy it. So guys, here is the S&P 500 ETF. This is the 1-minute chart, and here's what happened on the first half of today as we approach that supply rejection around this 393, 394, 200 SMA. You can see in the morning we got that CPI print, which caused a lot of volatility, but no real direction. Intraday, for the first half of the day, we got this slow upside move that was just sort of grinding higher. I like to call this a zombie grind, where the bids just keep stepping up and we just keep moving higher. There's slight rejections, but they don't really amount to anything. And on days like this, where we get this slow move to the upside, not much price action, no strong pullbacks that present large upside pushes, basically just this slow grind to the upside, I don't typically do very well. It's very difficult to get an option contract to increase in value during a slow grind like this. The IV steps in, the theta decay steps in. It's not really an ideal environment for an options contract, a very slow move in either direction. So I stayed pretty much away from this move. I tried a few trades on Tesla, on Meta, came out with a small $100 loss on those two trades, and I was just pretty much done for the day. As we were approaching that 11:30, 12 o'clock, the group and I were starting to see that the S&P 500 was approaching a pretty major level, a previous rejection point, as well as the 200 SMA level. Now, if I go out to the 30-minute chart, you're going to see where this level starts to step in. So here's the 30-minute chart on the S&P 500 ETF, and you can see that this was a previous low back here on Thursday of last week on the 2nd of March, and even just in the last few trading days, Friday, you guys can see right here, we pushed into the 200, pushed into this 393 level and rejected. Once again on Monday, yesterday of this week, we moved up into that 393, that 200 SMA level in the pre-market and saw a major rejection. So as we were slowly approaching that level today, the group and I were looking at it and saying this could be a great risk to reward setup. We've seen previous rejections here in the past few trading days. This is a major 200 SMA and also the 100 SMA. We know this is a supply level. We know this is a level we could play off of. If we're wrong here, we have a nice tight stop loss. It is what it is. It's an educated trade. It's a trade based off risk management and supply and demand levels. If the market is to break through it, we take our loss, we move on. But it is more than likely in this scenario that this supply could reject once again, and this is where that trade plan started to come in. So once again, we're here on the 1-minute chart, and we can see that 200 SMA that's sort of running across the screen. You can see we have this red line that's running across. That's the 200 SMA on the daily chart, and as we approach that level, we started to see some resistance step in. We saw this triple top start to step in around 393.50, which also lined up with the 39.70 level on the ES. So if I go to the ES, you can see right here, we moved right into that 39.70 level on the ES, which again is a major rejection point. If we go to the hourly chart on the ES, we can see we rejected that same 39.70 level here yesterday in the pre-market, and we were sliding into that level once again. You can see that is identical to the SPY. We had a 39.70 rejection yesterday, and we slowly started to push into that again. So as I started to see the 39.70 rejection and the SPY starting to reject that 393.50 and that 200 SMA, I started to get interested in this play. I knew I had good risk reward. I knew this is something that could potentially fade off this rejection like we've seen in the past, and I started to enter the position. So I'll go ahead and pop up the stats for this trade. I don't have this trade recorded live. I do have my entry recorded live, which I can pop into the end of this video if you are interested, but this was a 2-hour trade. I was in this trade for a total of 2 hours, and I had to be very patient. I said to myself, as long as the S&P 500 is below 393.50 and below the 200 SMA, I don't have a reason to exit this position. I know this is a major supply. I know this is a major moving average, and I have to trust the setup. I have to trust my plan, and I have to let it work out. I have to see it out. So on the left side, you can see TradeZella. I made about $2,000 on this position with 30 contracts. I made about a 60% return on this position, and here were my entries and exits. So my first few entries on this position was around 11:03, 11:04, and 11:05 a.m. So if we go over to the chart and we go to that time period, it was right around this period, 11:04, 11:03, and 11:05. It was all right in here is where I started to get interested. I was talking to the group, and I said that there might be an original rejection off that 200 SMA, which you'll probably hear in the video. I think I have it recorded. There might be an original rejection of that 200 SMA to trap in some short sellers, people that are looking to take that rejection right away. But my idea was that it's going to try one more time or a few more times to try to scare some people out of the position, and then it will roll over. And so that is why I started to enter this position as we were pushing to the upside. I could have done a little bit better on my scale-ins. I could have waited a little bit longer, but I was very confident in the play, and I wanted to start building a position. I could have scaled them in a little bit more separated, maybe took one here, another one here, and maybe another one over here. Always things to work on in a trade, but I was very confident and I wanted to build this position at that 200 SMA or near that 200 SMA. Now on this trade, my stop loss was ideally right around that 393.50. I did not want to see it break that level. This was that major supply. Yes, it is above the 200 SMA, but I still believed in that supply up there as well. So I didn't want to get out too early. I wanted to give this space. I knew that the market would try to fake some people out at this level, but I wanted to stay calm, cool, and collected and let the market work here and see if that rejection would come in. So we got that push to the upside. I was in some drawdown. I'll go ahead back into TradeZella, and you can see at the low point, I was down just around $1,100 on this trade, risking right about $1,500 was my max risk. So I was risking about $1,500 on this position. It was a little bit larger of a drawdown than I maybe would have liked. Again, my entry was not perfect. Could have done a little bit better on that stand front, but I did like the entry, and I did like how it started to work after I had my position. So I was down a little bit on the play, right? You can see I was having a little bit of a negative running P&L, but it ended up working very nicely for us. Here were my entries once again, and I did get a little bit of drawdown. Now, around this time where we started to get that rejection and we failed that 200 SMA, that was really where I started to get confident. So like I said previously, there's always something to work on in a trade. And in this trade, maybe it was being a little bit more patient for my entry. At my entry point, I was thinking we would double top around this 393 area, but we did go a little bit north of that level. I could have waited for maybe this triple top to form. I could have waited for us to refail that 200 SMA and maybe started to enter here. I would have avoided some drawdown in that scenario. So the entry point, a little bit early, a little bit anxious on it, but I was very interested and I was very convicted in the setup. So at this point, I was sort of just getting in at any point, looking for that rejection, willing to take the loss if I'm wrong. And I had to be wrong in a big way. I couldn't just be wrong by a few points. I was very convicted in it, and I really was giving it a little bit of a wider stop because I wanted to see if that rejection would come in. So I had my stop over that 393.50. We started to get this trade working, and we started to get that downside move. Now, typically, I will scale out of a play as it starts to work in my favor, but I knew at this point, after seeing the 200 SMA reject, I was very convicted in seeing a move back to the opening print. I was saying in the chat, I don't know if I have this recorded live, that I was looking for a move back to the open. We had a really ugly grind to the upside into the 200, and if the sellers start to stack up here at the 200, I think the S&P can move right back to that opening print, and that is pretty much where I started to scale out of this position. So you guys can see right here, we had the opening print right around this right in this general area around 390.50. As we started to approach that, I started to exit this position, holding some runners for some really, really extra percentage, which I think at this point was right around that 200% range. I'll go down to my entries and exits. You can see my first entries were right here, right around that 115 to 110 level. My scale outs were around the 150s, some scale outs up here at the 348s and 291. So really nice scale out on these last few, and my entries were right around that 110 to 120 level. I don't want to make this sound like anything too difficult, right? This is not a rocket science type trade. This is a trade that any of you out there can make. It just comes down to your conviction and your emotional control. Knowing the position that you're putting yourself in, understanding the technicals, understanding the risk, being comfortable with the risk is what kept me in this trade and what made me profitable. There is nothing here that you guys out there cannot see or cannot comprehend, right? This is a very easy supply rejection of a triple top at the 200 SMA that's happened 3 times in the last few days. It's not anything that is rocket science here on the charts. What it takes in this scenario is conviction in technicals, conviction in your trades, conviction in your emotions, and pretty much just an overall comfort level in a position. That's really all it took in this case. And again, we get a beautiful mid to end day rejection play that yielded a really, really nice percentage point gain. Congratulations if you guys took this one. I really enjoyed this trade with the group. We were in the chat sort of BSing for like an hour saying, this looks really good. We don't know if it's going to work. We wanted to stay patient. We wanted to stay in it. It was a pretty fun environment there today. If you guys caught this one with me, congratulations. This was one of the better trades of this week. And if you made some money, hope you guys do enjoy that. So now that we did a little bit of a trade breakdown, I'm going to add some live clips here. I don't have the whole trade recorded live, but you guys can see when I was entering some of the talk we were talking about in the chat. After that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this video. May have to be patient on this one. Let's see it out. So coming into that 393 again. The rejection play is still alive. Does it break down here though? That's the question. 393 is pretty big. The 3970 supply is still there. Still there, still alive. Does it give us anything though? Unsure. The strength is still to the upside, but you've gotten to a level where it just doesn't make sense to take calls anymore. Calls were nice up into this 3970. Sort of the morning plan this morning was if we get over 3940, play upside into 3970, which is what we did, but Tesla didn't move for me. So I got into Tesla thinking, okay, if we hold 3940 on ES, I want to go long. That's why I was long this morning. I was long Tesla this morning with the idea of it bouncing off 3940 on the ES and then Tesla following that push into the 70s. But Tesla did not do that. So that's sort of where I got messed up. But now we're at the 70s. So I would no longer take calls at 70. If there was ever a day that we would slide higher and then go back to the opening price, it would be on a day of CPI. 200 SMA, nice rejection. Can we get some juice? I mean, decent juice for now, but we'll see. I'm looking for more. I am looking for low of day on the ES and SPY, to be honest, guys. I'm looking for this 200 SMA to be something bigger here. I could be overzealous on it, but I am in at a point that I am comfortable with. That 200 SMA rejection, so just gonna stick by it, see if this plays out. When I look at the chart and I look at how fat that 200 SMA rejection is on the SPY, and we've seen these CPI flip days before. So unfortunately, this was going on a 3-hour recording time, so it did run out, and I just ended the live recording. But this is where things started to get interesting. We started to get some pretty big movement to the downside. We broke this VWAP, and you can see there in TradeZella from the earlier video, this is where the move really started to happen. Was holding, started to scale out, went from red to green here, and things started to get interesting from this point. So hope you guys enjoyed seeing where I entered, sort of how I managed it as I was in drawdown. At this point, it was just gravy, and things started to really unravel. A 200 SMA, major supply rejection, another great example of trusting levels, trusting supply and demand levels, understanding where the market is trading. Congratulations if you guys took this one today. I know a lot of you guys out there did, and I even see a lot of traders online talking about it, so GG to you guys. If you enjoyed today's video, if you learned something from it, press that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.